We'll now call to order the Ojai Sanitary Board meeting, 6 p.m. Apparently, there's a couple of directors missing, but I don't believe we have any remote attendees. Is that?
I don't have any AB 2449 requests. We just have Director Martinson and Director Ulrich absent tonight with advance notice for non-AB 2449 reasons.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Would you please take the roll?
Sure. Director Curtis.
Here.
Director Kentosh.
Here.
Director Stone.
Here.
Director Quillisi.
Here.
And Chair Berg.
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah.
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation. This is.
Allison, are there any additions or amendments to the agenda tonight?
Or none.
Are there any public concerns for items that are not on the agenda? Let's move on to consent items. All consent items are considered in a single motion and voted on without discussion. Any item removed from the consent list, request of a board member or the public is considered immediately following approval of the remaining consent items. Item 6, approval of minutes. Are we going to do this? So, are there?
I'll move approval of 6, 7, and 8.
Steve,
second.
Motion and a second for approval. Take roll, Allison.
Director Curtis.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
Yes.
Director Stone.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
And Chair Berg.
Yes. All right, moving on to the action items. Contract number 2023-29, design services for 2024 sewer main pipe bursting project, budget adjustment number 2024-02. Jeff, please.
So this is a little bit of a unique area. This is basically at the 5 points where Maricopa Highway, Cuyama, Rancho all come together. We have some area of pipe that we want to pipe burst, but part of the bursting goes into the Caltrans right away because of the Maricopa getting across Maricopa Highway. And so Caltrans has changed their permit requirements for anything. They a couple of years ago, they went back through and reclassified things as rural highways versus highways. And the reclassification affected all of the 33 from the end of the 4-lane down in Foster Park, all the way up through Casita Springs, then up past the high school. So all of that's been reclassified. So all of any work on that has to be done and done by full permit submittal and full submittal. They send them all up to state offices up in Sacramento. So they've taken away the sort of years ago, we used to have a relationship, still have a relationship with the local inspector. But if we were doing things and just had a approved traffic control plan, he was fine with us doing work. Well, now it's all night work. Now it's all up to the state. So this is a little bit of a unique project area for us to sort of tackle in-house. So we're going to have it designed out of house. We've got to do geotechnical work to find out what kind of soil we're going into. We also have to take geotechnical soil samples and tell Caltrans that there's no contamination, because if contamination comes from a project that we do in Caltrans right away, Caltrans has very stringent requirements now on what has to happen to that dirt. Even though it's our project, they want to know what's in that dirt and where that dirt went and how that contamination is being addressed. And so I don't expect contamination, but it's gotten more involved to do work on the 33 other than day-to-day maintenance. So we're going to go through and pipe burst a bunch of sections of pipe that show some problems and show some root intrusion and show some water intrusion. That area.
Any questions from the board?
You mentioned in your staff report, permission, right away permission to go on the lateral, service lateral.
So anytime we touch a lateral or touch the Y, even though we're in the street right away, we're touching the private lateral. So we need to get a right of entry form from the property owner to touch their lateral, to reconnect their lateral back to the pipe bursted pipe. Our ownership is the main line only. And so the Y and the lateral out to the property, even the lower lateral in the street section, is private, is owned by the property owner. And so we'll have to go get right of entry forms, not to go on their property, physical property, but to touch their lateral.
And if for some reason they don't want to participate,
We'll find a way around that. Everybody seems to work with us, but it's just one more step in making sure that anything we touch, we've accounted for how we deal with it.
Yes. When you're pipe bursting, how do you get soil samples?
We'll go out ahead of time and actually do some borings. And so geotechnical firm will come out during the design phase, do a boring or the soil type in the trench. What we want to do is two things. One, we want to find out if there's any contamination. And two, we want to find out what kind of soil is around the pipe. Because when you go through and you burst the pipe, you're actually sort of creating this pressure and pushing out into the native material. And you want to make sure you know what's out there so you can calculate how much push pressure you need to pull on the bursting head. You also want to know if there's cobble and if there's a potential for, some sort of issue with the cobble, being a problem during the bursting operation.
What's the pleasure of the board regarding 9A, B, and C?
Second that.
We do have a motion and a second to approve. Allison, please take roll.
Director Curtis.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
yes.
Director Stone.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Chair Burke.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 10. Root Control Contract 2023-08, Duke's Root Control, Inc.
So we maintain a database of all our line segments. And when we go through and do our CCTV work, the guys score the video. And there's a whole code language on how to score the pipe. And in areas where we have a lot of roots, they'll go through and they'll score that. And then we'll go and clean that out with our nozzle that'll clean off the roots. But in areas where the roots just keep coming back rapidly, we'll use this process and go in and chemically treat the roots. And what this product does is it sort of singes the ends of the roots and the roots pull back and the ends die off, but the root sort of is stunted in its regrowth. And so long term, we'll need to burst or line those sections. But pending being able to do that construction, this root control is a way to sort of hold back the roots. The product is put in by a nozzle like our Gap Vax has, but it's a foam and it's a two-part system. And then when it's the water, it foams up. So it forms like a shaving cream in the line, and it coats the whole inside of the pipe. And then it chemically sears the ends of the roots after we've gone through and cleaned them up. You don't do it when the thing is full of roots. So this is a process where we go out and treat heavy root areas. We keep track of them, and the goal is to over time then put them onto the lining or the bursting list and get rid of the roots altogether.
You ever video log this afterwards to see how it worked?
Yeah, it totally works. I mean, it sears that end of the roots and sort of stunts that regrowth. So it's a really good way to sort of get rid of the roots with the Gap Vax, and then you treat it, and you don't have to worry about coming back in 6 months and it's full of roots again.
Jeff, has the root control chemical been reassessed as far as viability and PFAS,
Yeah, it's not a PFAS problem. We have had, and we will do it with this one, of course, is, it's I forget something diquat, ammonia diquat, I think is the actual chemical. And what we will do is we'll go sample we limit to how many footage they can do a day. Because we found over time, if you do too much, it gets to the plant. So we'll go take water samples and sample for the ammonia diquat before we start the project. We'll run those same chemistry tests during the project and post-project to make sure that the ammonia diquat concentration in our outfall doesn't get too high, and make sure we know when it's gone back down to zero. And so we limit them to a small amount of footage each day. I think it's 6,000 feet. And that's it per day. And then even though they can do a lot more than that, we don't allow them to do it just because we found over the years that if they do too much more than that, we get too high a concentration at the plant and post-plant into the river. Now, it's not harmful to humans in those concentrations. What we're worried about is too high a concentration getting in the river and killing the vegetation in the river. It won't harm the river, but it's basically like a weed killer, and we don't want to put out too high of a concentration of the weed killer into the river.
Are we required to report this to the public when we're doing this?
We don't report, it doesn't in any way affect the house in any way. It's just in the main line. And any test we do at the plant, we have to report to the regional board. So the regional board will see that we've done the ammonia diquat testing before, during, and after. And so if there's ever any question, why was it seen in our effluent? Well, because we did this project.
Let's say you happen to stop in front of the clean out with their hose and let it run, and it goes up the lateral.
Well, our guys during our collection system, guys will monitor what they're doing, just because we want to make sure they get when they start, when they finish, and each line segment.
any other questions from the director?
We've been doing this a long time, Jeff. Do you have any kind of idea on the footage and how much that's gone down over the years? From when we started?
I don't have it in front of me. I'll get it and get it out to you. Send it out in the news and note.
Perfect, thanks.
This is just 12,000 feet, so it's 2 or possibly 3 days worth of work.
Yeah, we used to do a lot more. I want to say at one point in time we were over 100,000 foot. But I will get a list.
Thanks.
Designed up to kill
All of the root control that's needed.
Yes,
It's going down.
we've added a couple of line segments over the years, but we haven't had a gross increase in the footages. I mean, we've been videotaping our system for so many years. We know where the roots are. Really what it was we were worried about when you clean a line, how fast the roots come back. And so, years ago, we'd clean a line and we'd go back and video it, and the roots were already, back invasive enough to cause blockages. And so this is a way to sort of stunt that and push that down, kick the can down the road almost. Quite frankly, that's what we're doing. We're doing this until we can get to it from a lining and bursting perspective. But a lot of these areas, when we do our lining and bursting, what we really try and do is find a whole bunch of the same size pipe in an area for a lining or bursting project, so we can be efficient and cost effective on a economies of scale basis. And if we jump around in lining or bursting in any one year, the price goes up because they're jumping around.
All a la carte.
Yeah. So these are areas where we're doing the root treatment until we can get a project in that area and get after it.
A lot of it's in 6-inch now.
Need a motion?
I'd like to hear a motion, if I may.
Second,
You making a motion?
yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second approving item 10. Roll call, please. Alice?
Director Curtis.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
Yes.
Director Stone.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Chair Burke.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 11A and B, technical support services proposal for assessment of the OVSD wastewater treatment plant capacity and allocation of industrial loading capacity. Ashworth Leninger Group budget adjustment number 2024-03.
So one of the key sort of design criteria in a plant is getting rid of BOD. And BOD is called biochemical oxygen demand. It's a lab test where you take some of your water and you calculate how many pounds of air are needed to reduce the sample from down to 95%. So our permit requires us to take whatever BOD comes in and use it down 95%. And so the BOD calculations are how much air does it take to reduce that from 100 down to 5%. BOD in sort of is organic material, but it's basically fats, oil, and grease. And so in a wastewater flow, we're a natural bacteriological process. So the bacteria eats the BOD, and it consumes oxygen in the system. And at the same time, it cracks oxygen of the ammonia to take the ammonia from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate to nitrogen gas. And so more complicated than that, but it's kind of the bugs are eating the grease, the oxygen, and getting rid of the grease and the ammonia. So when you're sizing a plant, you got to know how much your flow is, and you got to know what your BOD load is, and then that's how you size the various treatment tanks in the treatment process. So how big should a anaerobic digester be, or an anoxic zone or an oxic zone, and how big are those ditches, and that's how you size them. Is you sample your wastewater and you go through the chemistry calculations to figure all that out. So when we built the plant in its current configuration in '96, the data that was used to size those tanks was from the early '90s. So we have seen a slow creeping up of BOD specifically over the years as water fixtures have gotten more efficient and more conservation. Well, you still got the same amount of grease from cooking your taco meat, but you got less water going down the drain. And so over time, our BOD load has slowly crept up. We also have a couple of industrial users who, although they don't give us many gallons, they want to give us high BOD. So EFA, Dairy Farmers of America, the Pepsi plant, makes those Starbucks mochas and lattes and stuff in glass. And there's a lot of milk and whey that comes off of that. Well, they want to dump it down the drain. And we've gotten some other agent or some customers that want to dump some BOD. And so what we want to do is we want to go do now an updated sort of full profile of the plant. Go sample our BOD, go look at the sizing criteria that was done for designing the plant for its various treatment zones, and figure out how much BOD is coming in, how much we can treat, and how much capacity we currently have. And then we'll go through the process of taking that capacity and assigning some to future residential growth. And we'll take some of that capacity and we'll say, okay, this is available for expanded commercial use. And we'll start allowing some more commercial users to consume some of that BOD load. When we get to our capacity, then there's no more. But there are some people out there that would like to dump BOD to us. One of the types of users we're starting to see is the breweries and the distilleries. They dump very, very high BOD, small quantity, but a very high concentration because they're distilling grains. And so they've got this biological waste that they want to dump down the drain. Typically, when you distill vodka and whiskey and stuff, they still it and they dump the the first third right off the bottom because it's got the gunk in it. And they use the middle third of the distilling process because it's where the ripe, perfect, concentration is. And then they dump the high end of the distilling process because that's usually high in alcohol. And so, you do a distillery run and you got 2/3 of the run, gets down the drain. Well, when you've made mash and cooked something off, you got a lot of BOD. So we want to kind of do now, since the early 90s, we want to do a modern, which is coming in, what can we treat, how much should we assign to each user, and then how should we charge those users? For a residential customer, there's no additional charge for BOD. We encourage people not to put their taco grease down the drain, but there's no charge for it. On the industrial side, we have a formula, and you take your volume that you dump down the drain, and it multiplies by some factors for suspended solids, dissolved solids, and BOD. And it's a very standard formula in the industry, but that's how we generate our bills for these customers. They don't get a capacity unit bill. They didn't get billed, so many capacity units. They get billed by gallons times all of these factors. And so depending upon how their flow volume changes and their concentration changes, they can get, significantly different bills every month. For instance, on DFA, their typical bills, what?
Well, it should be
40,000 a month. Well, I've seen a recent bill that was over 100,000 a month because they had a very high peak BOD dump. They did something crazy with their process. Some months they're making almond milk, some months they're making, non-fat milk, some months they're doing something else. And they make these runs of their product and then they dump to us and they get a bill accordingly. We'd like to sort of quantify that whole picture and make sure we understand where we are today. We're not in any risk today. We know what the BOD coming in is and we know what it's going out. We're in the somewhere of using 40 to 50% of our capacity to treat BOD every month. But we kind of want to do full characterization so we know going forward where we are. We did this same process for the nutrients for our current project. So we went through and did this whole sort of similar thing for nitrogen and phosphorus and ammonia to come up with how we sized our current project on the ammonia side of the world. And this will sort of work on the BOD side of the world. We don't treat, nothing we do differently for hormones or pharmaceuticals or anything. We don't vary our flow rates at all. We're really dealing with how do we deal with the ammonia side of the world and the BOD side of the world. And all those little other constituents, they kind of get handled in the process because they're very small in sort of treatment size to those other two the big sort of, so to speak. So we've done the nutrient side. We want to do the BOD side.
What you're trying to do is establish the capacity that we have left in the plant, the equipment we have in the plant.
Right.
So that in the future, somebody comes in with a high load, they can help pay for the
Well, and therein lies sort of the second or third step in this process, which is what happens down the road. So there could be a situation where somebody comes in and we've already consumed the available capacity and we say, hey, you can pay for upgraded treatment, or we say, hey, we don't have the capacity to serve you. And that's what's going on in the industry as a whole. Some of the businesses are coming to us and talking to us about coming into our area because other cities in the county or the Southland have said, we don't have BOD capacity. You don't have it, you don't have it. There's no way to sort of magically create it. And so the businesses are going where they can get the service they need. If we can provide the service and it works under our existing equipment and it works under our current structure and availability, then that's something that we should do. If we don't have it, then we don't have it. Now, we don't take the available capacity and assign it all to industrial future growth. We'll take some of it and say, what's the realistic look for 20 to 50 years worth of residential growth? And we have to serve them first. If you have a house and you have a legal lot, you have a legal right to connect to us. We can't sell your BOD capacity to some brewery and then you want to develop your lot, and we say, sorry, you can't fit here. So we kind of have to know how much room we have, what we assign for future residential growth, and whatever is available left for industrial use with some buffer, because, you know, you don't want to just sell the last pound, the last gallon. But we don't know and have a clear path forward, because the last time we did the characterization was in the early 90s. We know we're fine today, but I want to plan for the future.
Be proactive for VOD.
Now, ALG is in Camarillo. We've used them for other stuff. They've combined into a team, and the team is them and Stantec. Roger Stevenson is the designer of our plant. He knows our plant. He works for Stantec now. So he'll be brought on as sort of the civil side to do the equipment sizing, sort of characterization. ALG's role is really the oversight and helping us set up and make sure we manage the program correctly. ALG is a biology compliance firm, and Christine, who works for them, used to work for the regional board, and so onto them where we have sort of very specific, you know, regional board sort of and regulatory questions about how do we work through this process and making sure we comply with everything that the regional board would want us to do in terms of the study and the analysis and the modification. So that's how we selected and went to ALG and Stantec to get Roger Stevenson and Christine basically in cahoots to manage us through this process.
Do we still operate the sampling manhole at Pepsi?
Yes. What we do with Pepsi now is, rather than, we used to have a system that was in place before my time where we'd take samples and then we'd average some samples. And we found that over time, maybe it wasn't the most accurate. So now the first of every month, we take our 24-hour sampler down and we put it in that manhole and we sample for 24 hours, 4 straight days. And so we get a full profile of what they discharge. They also, because of the size of their discharge, they're over 25,000 gallons a day, they're required to, on their side, manage their flow, test their flow, and document their flow, and they're reporting that to us as well. So they're self-reporting their data, and we're verifying it with sampling in the manhole. And those 24-hour samplers are pretty cool. It's a rotary disc. It's about this big around and maybe this tall. It's a big cylindrical object, and we put that in there, and it has a tray in it, and there's 24 little vials in it. And what it does is it samples the flow every hour and puts it into the vial, but it also calculates the flow that's coming through. And so then when you take the 24 vials, you don't just dump all 24 together, because, you know, you get one sample, you had high flow in an hour and another flow and low flow in an hour. And so you adjust how much you combine to get the 24-hour composite based on the flow times each hour. So you get sort of an equivalent 24-hour profile of the plant as a whole. So it's a whole chemistry thing and a whole molar sort of adjustment that you have to do.
All right, item 11, with the pleasure of the board, 11A and B.
Move approval of 11A and B.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Allison, please take roll.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Chair Berg.
Yes. Okay, at this time, I'd like to move items 12, 13, and 14 after the information items. Actually, after the board comments and the general manager comments. And I would like to take item 13 and 14 before, I'm sorry, I'd like to take item 14 and 12. Item third, the manager's review and compensation after the closed session with legal counsel.
So we'll do the review and the legal is a closed session item. So we'll do those in closed session. And then we'll do the compensation section back in open session but 12, 13 and 12, 13 and 14 will all move to the end.
Correct.
That was the gist of it. Okay, information items for receipt and file. Are there any comments regarding the information items that are listed here?
I have a question.
Yes, Jack.
I should have asked it sooner. The money you're paying, Toro, was that part of the, FEMA stuff?
Yes.
Item 21, board member and general manager comment. Board member comments. Any comments from the board tonight? I just had one small comment. As it reminded me, we have a director remotely witnessing our meeting, but he can't comment or interact with us. Is that correct?
Yes.
There was some discussion about day of compensation, the study being the fact that he's attending the meeting, day of service, similar to maybe a day at the conference remotely, traveling to a conference, day of service. And we talked about it, but I'm not sure we made any.
So we went to the personnel and the ordinance committee, talked about it as a topic. We're finalizing some data to bring it back to those committees for review.
Okay, very much. All right, moving on to general manager comments.
Just a couple of things. We kind of decided we're not going to replace our 550 truck. We talked briefly about it at the last board meeting. We're not going to replace it. The guys are looking at options to sort of spread out some of the capacity or capabilities of that truck onto other existing vehicles. So we'll come back with a plan on how to do that. It'll save us the 550 fully replacement fully equipped with, all the pieces was approaching $150,000. And that just seemed a lot of money. So we're going to try and spread things out. We may have to make some modifications to a couple of other trucks. We need an air compressor and a toolbox and some things, but we're going to do that and avoid having to buy that next vehicle. We just talked about it briefly, the board member. We've finished a review of some of those ordinance changes as well as the employee handbook. Allison and I are reviewing the red line comments and we'll bring that back to the personnel committee here soon. And then the last item is the newspaper's coming for a tour of the plant and to see our new nitrogen reduction project tomorrow. So we'll have a newspaper article either this Friday or the following Friday. OVN, Ohio Valley News. That's all I have.
It just occurred to me that I voted on the consent item and I was actually supposed to abstain because I wasn't here for the last meeting as far as the approval of the minutes. I would like to now abstain from item 6.
Noted.
Okay, what I actually was intending to do for Robert's sake is to take the closed session for legal counsel before the evaluation of our general manager. Does that make sense? Because I don't think legal counsel is here during the
General manager.
So
We just make the closed session announcement for both 12 and 13. We can just move from 13 into 12, and then you can do that. I'd have to be back here in open session if in fact there is action to be done, so I will have to stick around.
Okay, well then we can take them in order.
We'll take them over then.
So you're going to make an announcement?
Or,
Is this the time you want to?
yes, please, we're
Okay.
not ready for item.
The Ohio Valley Sanitary District Board of Directors is going to convene in closed session on 2 items. First item is a closed session public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 regarding the general manager's annual evaluation. And item 13, closed session conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 subdivision A in the case of Vane and McLinn versus the Ojai Valley Sanitary District into our County Superior Court, case number 2023 CUB T011481. And it is now 6:36.
Just a timeout because one thing is I will stop the recording, and secondly, I'll kick out whoever this is. And I don't know.
So that would be a 2449 sort of clarification question. So Director Ulrich is operating remotely. It wasn't the 2449 allowed exception, but he is a legal board member. Can he participate or at least listen into the closed session?
He may not. He's not considered a board member at this point in time.
Public.
Not a public board member. He's treated as an individual at this point in time. It's like as if it was anybody else, but he's not here in his official capacity. And so the only way you could appear remotely in your official capacity is pursuant to 2449 and the two exceptions thereof, which is an emergency or a for cause, none of which are met in this case. So to have a gentleman who's in remote enter into a closed session would violate the Brown Act.
So that being the case, we'll have to exclude the remote attendees.
And he can come back in open session if we come back out of closed session, if he wants to see what
Open session, yeah.
And for future agenda purposes, 14 should be listed as an open agenda item.
No.
It's just a nomenclature thing. It's just a title.
Okay. So do we need a moment? Yeah.
Yeah, we need a moment.
To
So we'll have Ulrich leave, I'm assuming.
Bill, I think we're going to kick you out.
How does he know when to come back for 14?
I don't know.
You could email him and let him know that you're in open session.
Okay. 52 PM, and at this time we're coming out of closed session with nothing to report. And now we will move on to item 14, general manager compensation.
He left. Yeah, definitely in the lobby or anything, so.
And with general manager compensation, I don't have it in front of me here, but there was a section for reviewing what we have recently done regarding the staff. 2.5% increase based on, that's a COLA number, right?
Correct. So your August 28th, 2023 board meeting, CPI was reviewed, and the board directed staff approved a 2.5% cost of living to all district staff except the general manager. His any increase to his salary is at board discretion at time of performance evaluation.
Okay. My feeling, Jeff, is that we may be near the upper end of the range. I have no idea what Carpinteria and Goleta are paying their general managers, and we didn't do a study this year. But I would probably top to maybe upper 85, 90 percentile. You know, the directors have opinions on that.
In my opinion, I think I said this last year too. As a baseline, all the staff got a 2.5% cost of living, so I don't know the increase we should be looking at here is 2.5. For this issue, because he's inflationary pressures and everyone else is.
So I agree. Yes.
So if he's overpaid now, he was overpaid before. We're just,
I didn't say overpaid.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's being paid fairly.
And I would entertain an increase in this particular year. When I think of the treatment plant upgrade as being the culmination of it's worth of a career for Jeff. You know, it's been quite an accomplishment to get that done. When you look at what happened with the storms this winter, the water district, we're still trying to get our pipe fixed in Highway 33.
You should get hazardous duty pay.
Yeah. As he got ours done in 6 weeks or whatever it was. So, you know, if there's ever a year where we're going to get bare minimum, this might be it, but I'll defer to you.
Steve, what's your opinion?
Well, I agree on a floor. I think the cost of living is changed from last year. I could certainly go with 4 or 5%.
We're just doing opinions right now. There's no motion. Comments on this?
Yeah, I would go with the dictionary 2.5% or whatever it is, and then just bear in mind that he does have that 5% deferred compensation that he gets. With,
That's part of the current compensation.
correct.
Like salary, it just doesn't go in, it goes somewhere else.
Jack, any range of?
Yeah.
Robert, do you handle this with a motion and a second, just like any other?
Yes. To make it an
So,
official action.
the director like to, I'm leaning right towards like a 3% myself. It was a tough year. It was a lot of extra work. I'm sure for Jeff, maybe some long nights. And he doesn't fail. He just keeps going. Anybody else have that's not a motion. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'll make a motion for 4%. See if anyone wants to second that.
Forward.
What would you think of 3.5?
Accept a friendly amendment?
Well, I don't know. Let's see what happens with it.
Well, so far, nothing, sir. I think 4 died for lack of a second, Chair.
It did. It sounded like it died. Mr. Kentosh like to suggest a different number?
I'm gonna throw out 3.5. I want to explain my reasoning for it. Jeff's doing a great job, but everybody's hurting nowadays. When you look at his total salary for the size of the district, doing pretty darn well. I don't want to increase his base salary so high that he's going to retire in a few years.
Oh, you're the one who made that.
I'm going to make a motion for 3.5%.
I'll second 3.5.
Okay, in this case, we take roll, is that right? We do have a motion and a second for 3.5%
Have discussion.
adjustment. Any discussion on that?
One thing I have to say is we only gave our employees 2.5.
Is there a negative, do you think?
Your conclusion is?
We should give him 2.5.
Employees have a step and range process where they can go up to the next step and range until they top out, as he topped out. As we discussed previously, we didn't do a survey this year. Other folks are doing other districts, so we don't know if they topped out or not.
Okay.
I think we can take a vote, and if it
I'll call
fails,
the question.
Go ahead, Allison, take roll.
So the motion is for 3.5%, made by Director Kentosh. We have a second from Director Quillisi. Director Curtis? Director Stone?
No.
Director Byrd? Director Quillisi
Yes.
and Director Kentosh.
yes.
Director Curtis mentioned 2.5%. I kind of think 3 is a good.
I make a motion for 2.5%.
Motion for 2.5%. Takers on 2.5%.
Oh, we've had 3 months, apparently not. We've had 3 of us go for 4, 3.5, and 2.5. So that leaves one number left. So one of you two guys are gonna have to propose 3.
I will second the 2.5% just to put the vote out.
Hey,
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Curtis for 2.5% and a second from Director Stone. Director Berg,
I'll vote yes on the 2.5.
Director Quillisi,
No.
and Director Kintosh.
oh, take the time. I'm gonna vote no. I think there's a number we haven't tried yet.
And Director Curtis, and Director Stone. Are you yes or no?
No. Okay. We're kind of closing in on 3%.
I want to make a motion for 3%.
I'll second 3.
We do have a motion and a second to consider 3% as a raise in compensation. Allison, please take roll.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
Director Stone,
No.
Director Berg,
I'll vote yes on that.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
and Director Kintosh.
Yes.
Are we officially majority?
1-1.
Hung me out, you did.
4 is a core.
Okay,
Staying?
make the necessary adjustment. And this is that correct?
To September 12th, and we'll bring a formal contract amendment to the next board meeting.
And then, just for the sake of discussion, since we're still in open session, maybe we should consider doing a similar district compensation study for the general manager next year. I'd like to know where we stand.
Note that.
Be a good idea. I support that.
And are there any other comments for tonight's open session for our board? Suggestions? If not, we'll close the meeting here at 7:02.
Well,